And thank you for being with us bright and early this morning, everyone. I know there are a lot of possibilities for how you spend our time today, and so we're excited to have you all with us for this discussion. Before we get into it, I want to introduce our panelists this morning. We're going to go in this order, which is also the order on the screen, so everyone can follow along. First, we have Elizabeth Brown from Building Markets. We can clap for Elizabeth. Thank you. We're going to do that 4 more times. I believe in you. Then we have Cheri-Leigh Erasmus from Civic Strength Partners. We have Sizwile Sibindi from Financing Alliance for Health. We have Fiavi Tuwundraini from Manzaboke Association. And we have Ebrima Saidy from Blue Ventures Conservation. All right, and I will let them tell you more about their work as we get started, but I want to offer a couple framing thoughts before we get going. Promise to make these brief because these guys are the ones you're here to listen to. First, I just want to take a little pulse on the room. Raise your hand if you helped your organization navigate a major pivot or transition of any kind in the last year. Okay, so most of us. Are we tired? Is everyone a little tired? Yeah, okay. We're tired up front. I like that. So I won't belabor the context, which we're probably all waking up in the middle of the night thinking about, but aid disruptions, geopolitics, technology advancements, the world is challenging us to work in new ways in this moment, certainly for me, I'm guessing for many of you, given that show of hands. And many organizations, including most of our audience and all of our panelists, are adapting to ensure that the impact endures, even if that means reimagining everything about how we work, our role in the world and in the sectors we work in, or even sometimes in the case that our organizations might not endure. So we've invited 5 brave organizations to come share their experiences of pivoting and to generously talk not just about the what, but the how. What does it feel like as a leader to be navigating these moments of big change? We have different kinds of pivots represented on the panel today, both big leaps, so mergers, globally distributed operations, embedding new technology end-to-end in what we're doing, and smaller, deliberate steps that are just about day-to-day resilience. So we're going to hear about all that, and I'm going to hopefully make space for some questions along the way. Each leader will share a bit about the choices they made and what it took and continues to require personally to make those choices successful, or as successful as they can be in a world that is changing every day. No pressure, guys. So with that, we'll get started. I'm going to invite everyone. We're going to go across the panel, and I want to hear one sentence about what your organization does, really one sentence if you can do it, so that everyone gets some shared context. And then just tell us about a big pivot, one that you've gone through in the last year, and one surprising learning. So Ebrima, I'm going to ask you to kick us off, and we're going to go this way.
Thank you, Shauna, and morning, everyone. Blue Ventures is a fisheries and marine conservation organization. And we were founded in Madagascar, hence we have one of our partners here with us about 20 years ago, and it was founded by Al Harris, that many of you know, is a Skoll awardee. The big pivot for us, starting in Madagascar, was about delivering directly to the communities. We set up shop, like many NGOs do, recruit staff, employ them, they deliver services directly. And recently we took the very big, bold decision to actually completely shift to a community-powered change model, directly delivering only through partnerships. And that has been big because it means it disrupts our entire model, what we know, how we deliver it, and comes with a lot of challenges that you have to manage at all levels, comes with anxiety even for staff that are delivering it. And I think one of the biggest learnings in the process for us is about change and managing that change. And often in our sector, we're not the best at change management. We don't have the luxury of money to invest in it. But big learning with staff who are seeing this pivot and this change is how do we bring them on that journey? And so investing in change management capability, and Gildas, our content director, now regional director for Southern Africa, is here. He building capability in his team to have a change management team that will bring staff along on that journey. And what we've learned is that most often, people are not against change. Nobody don't want change. They want to see what is that change going to result for them. And so long as you can bring them along to understand that, to see the added value of Blue Ventures investing in a huge network of frontline community organizations, often in communities where they come from, with partners that they know for years, that they have actually been supporting and holding their hands, they can see the added value of that big network of 50, 100 small-scale fisher community organizations, and they appreciate that, and therefore able to invest their time, their capability, and their efforts to pivot the way they work with those partners from this concept of subcontracting to actually you are a true partner and you are going to take on this mantle and this work, and I am going to be irrelevant as a Blue Venture staff.
I'm going to be irrelevant. That just hit me when you said it. I'm curious, before we move on, I want to ask one clarifying question. What proportion of those local partners would you say you were actively working with, or at least like collaborating with, before this big change?
So his organization is the first for our new pivot. So we've had probably another 5 organizations that we worked before as subcontractors. We build them into grants and awards, and we subcontract to them like we all do. So the biggest pivot now is his organization is the first to receive funding from us through our Frontline Community Fund, which is on the basis of long-term, flexible, trust-based funding. So it's not about subcontracting to them at all. So it's a whole new way of working, and beginning with his organization, and hopefully seeing many more to follow his footsteps.
Awesome, thank you. I imagine this will be a theme, but that seems like one pivot that has 1,000 micro pivots embedded inside of it. Fiavi, I want to hear from your perspective about what it felt like on the other side of this partnership to work in a new way with new partners. But before we do that, I'm going to invite everyone to put on their headsets. All right, Fiavi, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Ok, merci. Miarahaba antsika iaby voreto. Anarana moa dia Soa Fiavy Daniel Tovinjainy, avy amin'ny association Manjaboaka. De faly miarahaba antsika magnatriky zao from eo araky Skoll zao zany. De araky fanontania teo zany hoe manao koa le fahombiazany ny fitantana zay ataona ihany. Somary sarotsarotry moa voaloha satria Bleu Ventures zany ro nianjaikitra le asa rehetra, de zahay mpanatanteraka avao am'le activité zay atao am'le asa fitantana nan-dranomasina. De tsapa toa de nanafangata zahay de nahatsapa koa loatra aleo omena financement zahay mba mivantana aminay mba ahafahay migerer le asa tokony atao. Satria zany araky eritreritry ny fokon'olo zany laha bivy avao zany Bleu Ventures mitantana raha iaby zay tsy ho anay le asa na tsy zahay le mahazo tombotsoa voalohany, fa toko zahay no mitantana direct. De manao raha moa tsy mora zay lafa nahazo zahay tamy herintaona zany nahazo zay famatsia arabola zay zany, de zahay mitantana azy direct zany. De Bleu Ventures eo avao fa amy lafy tekniky sy formation isan-karazany. De manao raha moa tsy mora zay somary sarotsarotra tsy fantanteraha. Nefa noho ny fa maro teknika zay ny napetrany Bleu Ventures aminay de narakaraha avao rey, de nilamina avao aty, de fampianara misy formation malidiniky, fampiresaka amireo technicien reo fantanteraha azy, de milamina tsara zany le fandeha le financement hatramizao. Thank you.
So yeah, it sounds like a pretty universally positive pivot for Fiavi's organization, but I know, Ebrima, that making that happen required you to do a lot of maneuvering on your end. We're going to talk a little bit later about how you knew it was the right choice. But first I want to move to Civic. Tell me a little bit, tell everyone one line about Financing Alliance for Health, and then tell us like what's your big pivot this year, and what's one thing that surprised you about it?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So Financing Alliance for Health is a health financing organization. We work with African governments to help them to mobilize resources for their health budgets. And we also work with the Africa Frontline First, specifically to mobilize funding for community health workers. In our work with Africa Frontline First, we are also the fiscal sponsors for Africa Frontline First, and that leads us to what our big pivot was. Our big pivot is fiscal sponsorship, and this involves us being an entity that allows funding to pass through for other smaller organizations who do not have the right governance structures, they don't have the right legal structures in the continent, yet they are doing great work. But when funders look at them, they say, oh, you're not a 501c3 organization, so you are high risk, you cannot receive funds. So we decided to pivot and become fiscal sponsors because we already had this experience with Africa Frontline First. So we thought that would be something that would be meaningful for us. And also because our name is Financing Alliance, so that alliance part of our name speaks to how much we value partnerships. And we wanted to be good partners in the ecosystem and come in not just as any other fiscal sponsor, but a fiscal sponsor that is a true partner, that values what you are doing, that is interested in seeing you grow, that is interested in seeing you succeed, and that is interested in you not paying like extra high fees just for you to be able to receive funding. In fact, one of the organizations that we fiscally sponsor is here this week. They are called the Missing Billion Initiative, and they are hosting an event as well. And yesterday when I met some of the ladies who work with the MBI, and they were so grateful, like they were so happy that they are even here, they are receiving funding. And for me, that was really a validating moment because we want smaller organizations to thrive. They are doing great work already. So why should they be punished because they are not registered, in the US, or they are not registered in the UK. So for us, that was very important. Something that was a big lesson for us is that because we are a health financing institution, we do not have all the skills in all the other sectors. We don't have skills in education. We don't have skills in livelihoods. So we needed to think more critically about how, one, we position our offering, but number two, how can we practically help those organizations with things such as, with M&E and so on if we don't have the skills. So that's something that we had to think about critically and figure out as well, because we truly wanted our fiscal sponsorship to be sector agnostic, because when you look at all the different types of work that are done, if you look at health, it's related to education, because a healthy child cannot go to school. If you look at livelihoods, someone who is not feeling well needs to also have food, if you look at nutrition. So there's interconnectedness. And for us, that was very important to recognize that there's still more that we can do without necessarily diluting our own work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I was struck really hearing the three of you speak in a row. I was thinking about, I've been in this work in one form or another for about 20 years. For at least 10 of those, I've sat in rooms like this where we talked about localization, supporting local organizations, trust-based funding, and often been frustrated sometimes with the progress to actually deliver on that language. And it's feels like a really positive outgrowth of what has been a really tough season for so many of us to hear Ebrima and you and Fiabi talking about like real dollars and support going out the door with urgency and trust. So that's something that feels like a sort of positive outcome of a otherwise really tough moment.
Yeah, for sure. And the word localization has been used for so many years, but we haven't always seen it tangibly. Like for us in the continent, in Africa, we haven't really seen the actual localization. And so it becomes a big priority for us as Financing Alliance for Health to say, if we are localizing, let's localize for real. And an example of what we are doing as well is we are moving our headquarters has always been in Nairobi, but our board has always been globally distributed. But now we are saying we are going to have an African board, and that's very important for us because we have to practice what we are preaching, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Cheri-Leigh, I'm going to come to you, and I'm on the back of that reflection. I'm thinking about how few conversations I've been in about mergers and acquisitions in my 20 years in this sector, including when I was the CEO of a nonprofit. So I know that's something you've been working with organizations, a set of organizations on this year. Can you talk a little bit about what is Civic Strength Partners, a relatively new entity as I understand it, and what have you been up to and what's one surprising learning?
Civic Strength Partners is a initiative founded by 3 partner organizations: Accountability Lab, where I'm from, Development Gateway and IREX Venture, and Digital Public. And this really grew out of need. So early last year, we were collecting data from organizations to better understand their financial runways. And this was really based on the fact that some of our philanthropic partners wanted to understand, besides their funding, what was the true impact on their grantees across the world. It became clear to us, the co-founders of Civic Strength Partners, very early on that the financial runways of organizations were incredibly short. People had at best about 6 months worth of funding left, and that was for many organizations a best case scenario that came with having to do furloughs and layoffs, closing offices in some countries, right? And knowing that there's a need to do differently. So we started conversations with folks exploring what might a different way of working look like for them. And it became clear that organizations were looking at a multitude of options. One of them being mergers and acquisitions, which we thought in the beginning might be the biggest strand of work. But then it clearly became apparent that the need for transformation was on a spectrum. And getting back to what Civic said, actually some organizations needed help creating a commons around their back office with a number of organizations. There are things like fiscal sponsorship. Some folks needed support to wind down responsibly too, because ultimately that also costs money, right? At the best of times, organizations don't have funds for the legal support, the consulting support to think through that whole journey. And ultimately, that is what we've been trying to do over the last year. We stood up a shared fund through support from a number of philanthropies, including Skoll. And ultimately, we now work with folks through a whole transformation from a readiness assessment to the end line, which might be a merger. Or some kind of strategic pivot, and we're able to fund the other expertise like legal that they need to bring in on that journey. One of the things I learned was that we were spot on, that folks had good ideas, but needed the spaciousness and thought partnership to think through how do you transform your organization when you feel like you're on a ship that's sinking, that you're also trying to keep afloat, and now you suddenly need the bandwidth on your own to figure out a massive pivot. So very often people just needed that thought partnership and the spaciousness to pause, reflect, and figure out a way forward.
Awesome, thank you. I feel overwhelmed by the idea of transforming my organization, hearing you talk about it. It's like taking me back. So that kind of support and walking with organizations seems really valuable. Elizabeth, I want to hear from you. Tell us a little bit. I think you have a slightly different type of pivot. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Building Markets is a global network that supports SMEs on their market access journey. We primarily meet SMEs that are falling in that missing middle, right? So they're a little bit bigger, they've maybe received some microfinance funding, but they're still too small or not visible for financial institutions to come along, or to sort of for buyers to know them and to begin to contract with them. So that is when Building Markets enters their journey. And we work through a find, build, connect methodology. So we've collected data on SMEs in the markets where we've worked for many years. We run training courses and we do matchmaking. That is our theory of change, is that when SMEs are able to enter supply chains and increase their contract value, they create needed jobs in the communities where they work. And we've been doing that for many years, funded through a traditional grant structure. Our pivot is thinking about how technology can allow us to scale that work in a more cost-effective way. So what we've invested in through the Pivot Fund is beginning to think, how can we use technology, AI-enabled technology, to build a platform that allows us to productize a part of that methodology, begin to test a revenue stream that can offset some of the costs that we've been relying on from donor funding, and put our organization on a more sustainable financial journey. And it's been a really interesting space. I think one of the things I think we're going to get to this question, but one of the things we've really had to let go of is sort of the security of doing things the way we've always done it. Mm-hmm. It's really scary to rethink how you've delivered services that have worked, right? There's evidence behind what we're doing. And so embracing a new technology can be a little bit scary. But one of the things that's been really exciting is that our businesses and the market has asked for this for a long time. And so I would say that this has sort of forced us into this journey, and really required that we take that step.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for making the perfect segue, because I do want to move us from the organizational to the personal a little bit, because this is a room full of leaders. It sounds like maybe leaders who are navigating change themselves. And I'm curious, what is something either in yourself or about the way you think about your work or your role, what is something you personally had to let go of to step into this new way of being and working in the work?
Yeah, I mean, I can go into that a little bit more. So I think it really has been letting go of the security of how we've always done it, right? And embracing change, which has been really scary. And letting go of sort of perfection over progress. Mm-hmm. I think that's been something we've come back to a lot. We went through an exercise early on in this journey of testing technology, and I'm sure many of you who are exploring AI or other technology tools have done this, the question of, do we buy it or do we build it? And for us, we, after doing some work with Skoll and the Patrick McGovern Foundation, we landed on, we're licensing this technology. We chose to do that for a couple of reasons. One, the technology is changing so quickly, AI is changing so quickly, that it doesn't make sense for us to invest in a standalone product that may be different 3 months from now. So buying it allows us the flexibility to pivot more quickly, and also to not have to build our own development team from scratch. And so, just leaning into that flexibility, knowing that, we can make choices, we can, assess and then move on, has been helpful. And I think it requires just a different way of thinking than many of us who sort of run very evidence-based. We work slowly and methodologically. Yeah. And when you're kind of entering the technology space, it requires a different a different framework and approach. And we're not letting go of one and fully embracing the other. I think we're carrying evidence with us, absolutely, but it's requiring a lot of flexibility and mindset.
Yeah, I'm also hearing in what you shared, like the choice to buy and not build is a choice to give up some control.
Exactly.
On top of the control you may have already had to relinquish, not by choice, through this moment. So that's brave. Yeah. Cheri-Leigh, maybe I'll ask you a different flavor of this question, which is like, what is one of the common things you see organizations or leaders having to let go of in order to move into the kind of change you're supporting them on?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing leaders having to think through the importance of the work and the impact they want to see, and what that means for what their particular organization offers within that value chain, right? So maybe you were doing 6 things before. You don't have funding to do 6 things anymore. What are the 3 other partners that they should rather do this because we need someone to continue it, but we can't continue it? So I think a lot about letting go of your own ego and your logo in service of the work. And I think there are people on different ends of the spectrum, but I think if one is truly invested in the type of change and social impact that we state in our mission, then we have to be able to let go of some of the things that we thought we're best to do, and figure out, with a smaller set of resources, what are we uniquely positioned to do? And I think that's actually not a bad thing. I think many organizations over the years, where things were perhaps slightly more flush, went into some mission drift as well, right? And took on things that maybe they were not best equipped to do. So I think there's a bit of a back to basics and working in an ecosystem format with others to make sure that these 5 things we have to cover in our line of work, who's doing it, and let's sort of like parcel it out in a way.
Thank you. Civic, how about you? What do you have to let go of?
I'll start with the personal.
Okay.
For me, as an accountant, very risk averse. So when I see risk, I see all the red flags, and that's something that I really had to let go of, and also recognize that it's good to be aware of the risks, it's good to evaluate them, but they should not be the thing that hold the organization back. We'd rather know what the risks are and then mitigate and still be able to move forward. And then as an organization in general, we believe that we are good at what we do when it comes to health financing and working with the governments. And there was that fear of, do we really know how to do fiscal sponsorship? Yes, we've been doing it, but we've been doing it in a safe space because we've been doing it with an initiative that we are already a part of. Now we are going to be doing it with organizations that some we have not even interacted with before. So there was that fear of, are we going to be able to do it well? And also, if we invest in the infrastructure that is required, are there going to be returns? Because ultimately we are accountable to the board. And if it doesn't work, what are we going to go back and tell the board? Because I think that is a real fear for most leaders, right? So we needed to let go of that and also remember that at the end of the day, we've got our mission, we've got our vision, recognize how what we are trying to do is eventually going to lead back to our mission and to our vision. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think, all partnerships seem great the day we ink the deal. And the question of what will we do when things get hard together in a new relationship that can feel fragile is a really important one. I'm curious, if and as things have gotten tricky, how have you navigated being in new partnerships and navigating tough waters? It's hard enough to navigate tough waters with our most trusted friends and family, in my experience. So
so we often joke that the person that you marry is not the person that you divorce. So there's a big difference between that time, and that's why there's a prenup. So for us, our prenup is making sure that from day one the contracts are very clear. The expectations are very clear. No matter how much we love each other as organizations, we still need those processes, those systems. We still need clear contractual terms, clear contractual obligations, and very clear expectations right from the first day. So that as we are navigating any challenges that come through, we have something that we can still refer back to. We can still go back and say, remember at the beginning, this is what we agreed on. If it's no longer working, how best do we navigate through it? And I must say, though, that we've been very lucky in that we've had such great partnerships. It has really worked very well. And we have not had challenges that are earth-shattering. But if we're to experience that, I believe what we did at the beginning would help us. Yeah.
Right. Clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
Fiabi, I have a different question for you. So I'm going to ask Ebrima first to answer this one, which is, what did you have to let go of to move into this new way of working?
Yeah, this is probably our third pivot internally.
This year?
Over our 20-year period. So internally, we joke that we are a 20-year startup, and hence the reason this big change this year is the third in the series of those pivots. And to that point about letting go, the need often in the communities that we work, the need is so large, and therefore the temptation for mission creep is real. And it's not that we want to do it, it's because the need is there and we're present and we just can't look away. We want to do something about it. Blue Ventures, as a fisheries and marine conservation organization, at some point was doing beekeeping, health, education, water and sanitation, name it, we were doing it. And so we had to make a big pivot years ago to say, actually, who are we? In addition to that, your point, Cheri-Leigh, about logo, ego, but it's also on top of that is I cannot do all of this alone. And letting go of those things, not walking away from them, but then setting up deliberate strategic partnerships and pooling other organizations who are specialists in these areas and setting strategic partnership agreements with them, allowing them to use our infrastructure as a lever to operate in those areas. You know, some of the areas we work are really, really hard to reach areas. They're coastal communities, they're far from capitals where most big NGOs are based. Some of our places are islands that NGOs cannot get to. In Madagascar, we have boats, we have fleet, so they can use our infrastructure and lever on that to be able to come and bring their expertise and services in those areas. So it was a big thing for us to have to let go of those, but not walk away from them, set strategic partnerships, deliberate ones that will bring experts in those areas, in those communities, and we work side by side with those experts in those areas. That allows us to not have missions creep and go back to our core mission, which is we want to see thriving communities, we want to see thriving small-scale fishers, and we want the ecosystem that they depend on to thrive. And we let other people do other things.
Appreciate that. One thing that, you know, when I work with organizations and they're going to change, one thing everyone asks is, how will we know if it's working? Like, right? Like, we're making these big choices, we're doing the hard change management, we're accepting some risk we don't love. We're, you know, like we're making big choices about working with new partners in new ways, giving up control, all these things that are not just hard organizationally, but hard individually as leaders. Like what observably will tell us we're on the right path? And I wonder, actually I want to start with you, Fiavi. So I'm gonna put on my headphones and invite others who took theirs off to do the same. Can you think of a moment in your working relationship with Blue Ventures when this new way of working, you could tell you were on the right path, that this way of working together was right? Like what did you see, what did you notice that told you that?
Okay. Hafantarana zany fa hoe mandeha soa le famatsiam-bola miasa fitantana. De voalohany moa resaky fitantanana zany jerevantsika resaky vokatra. Satria araka ny ireo mpamatsy vola zany, na omeny le vola misy zavatra tsatsarina, na koa zay mpianjiaka zany mampiasa le vola misy vokatra tsatsarinay koa amile vokatra zay ilay anjiaka. Zaho zao moa tena communauté, tena mpianjiaka mpanjono asako any amin'ny tanàna misy ahy zany. De laha tsy misy zany vokatry n'le asa, tsy hita zany na zahay mpanjono tsy mazoto amile asa fitantana fa noho ny fisian'ny vokatra maromaro ireo fikambana zany hampirofoko an'izany amin'ny faritra misy anay agny, faritra Tiliara zany, région sud-ouest agny zany, eo amin'ny efatsy dimy eo le association. De laha jereva ny vokatra zahay ao amin'ny association Manjaboaka no matsatry voalohany. De eto moa tale régionalinay baka Madagasikara hanaporofoa izay raha zavatra zay fa nambara raha zay tamin'ny faha-roapolo tao anniversaire Bleu Ventus tao amin'ny tanàna misy anay zany. De zahay matsatry voalohany sasaky vokatra. Eo koa fahasimbany le vatohara koa. De zahay koa resaky fiarova zany fanana ay le famatsiam-bola, miezaky zahay hikarakara izay fanagna ay ao an-dranomasina voajanahary ao zay mba satria ny taranaky ay zany zahay karazana hoe vezo zany tsy mahay miasa bureau fonctionnaire fa le ranomasina no fotom-pivelomana, io no antofany sakafo, zaza mianatra iaby toto fiainana zany amile ranomasina iny. Zay mahatonga anay agny amin'ny faritsy igny tsy dia avaram-pianara loatsy mahamenatsy zany fa riaky iny zany no tena ahitavanja voaloha zany. De mahomby koa le raha satria le vidim-bokatra zao noho ny fahazoay le famatsiam-bola maro ezaky zavatra taloha zany mbo tsy nahazo famatsiam-bola zay de somary miantehitra amin'ny Bleu Ventus avao. Lafa niazo ay zany le famatsiam-bola niezaka hay nikaralala tena hoe niazo zony mpanjono zany, zony mpanjono hoe lasa rebereben'olo tsika ty aloha tsika fa mana vola de ihetsiky tsika mba hagnamporofoatsika hoe toy no tena fotompy velomatsika de prix zao natao ay tamin'ny resaky fitantana réserve zany réserve ahorita baka agny le société zany roa manome le prix le vokatra fa zahay zay amianjozy fa imo volagny zao marefo zahay ara tamizay de tsy tafa zany le prix tamitoy amizay zahay tena nihetsika tena nila collecteur matanjaky soa amy faritsy zay misy zany natao annonce nalefa amy telefony hoe zahay ato hamoa isy vokatsy voa le réserve ahorita ay de zay olo tena mahazo prix ambonimbony ro omenay vokatsy de nanao concurrence reo société reo de ny nahomby le raha eo koa amile resaky fitantanam-bola igny de mahomby koa le raha satria misy fagnaraha maso bevata ao de noho ny niveau ay ambany de mana zahay administration finance zany recrutement zany io amy faritsy misy anao anak'olo bako avao zany ala iresponsable zay comptable resaky vola zay de ny membre ao koa misy rafitra misy président misy trésorier de trésorier koa zany manakahe manokany magnaramaso jala mivoaka sy midy jala mivoaka ao sy midy mba hagnampirofo hoe manak'olo le financement ny azo mba hampangarahara le asa atao iaby zany de fiainan'le olo agny manomboka amizao me fa mihatsara zany fa indrindra moa vokatsy tamy tao ty hitatsika publication karazam-bokatsy aby nalefa tamy ty re tena mahomby eo koa satria le base ay agny zany mahatonga le tsy azo ay vidim-bokatsy tsara de nohony lalana ratsy tsy maro zany fara nananga zany nahatsapa zahay hoe tsika hananga le coopérative io coopérative io magnampy anay amizao de resy lahatsy ao tena resy lahatsy le mpanjono iaby hoe tsara itoy resaky fitantana toy tena tsika homby ro tena mahazo tombo amy asa toy fa tsy ny hoe ireo ataontsika hoe bevible vatirs avy any fa de tsika homby ro tena mahazo tombo bebe kokoa amy asa toy mivoatsy zao le coopérative ao manjo soa le vokatsy vilia ao le olo an-tanà eo avao ro miasa amile membre ao manao membre ao amy raha io ao de eo avao le enda tamy amy fotoa cyclone rey tsy misy mpivily vokatsy amy faritsy misy anay fotoan'ny cyclone aminan'izao zao ny fisian'ny coopérative mandeha avao satria manaky mois de février zany tena mijaly zahay any tsy misy mivily le vokatsy de satria misy saison cyclone amy igny de nisia coopérative io zany herintao natranga tao de afaky nandeha soa le fiainana zany tamy tao ty zany zay zany ty ankapobe
So I'm hearing two things from you. One are some really obvious and observable differences that told you're on the right path. So the work you're able to do in the fisheries, the increased stability in the financing, this sort of like stewardship of the funds, everything going well. But also I heard something more personal, which is like the sense of control over the work that most meaningfully touches your lives and the fisheries that means so much to you. And I want to ask Ebrima before we move on, just curious if there's anything from your side, like what were you looking for to say like, yep, this model, this new way of working that came at great personal and organizational cost is the right one?
Yeah, I mean, power, I mean, we talk about shifting power. Power is really about control over resources and who's got that. And, you know, hearing him talk about how they can decide the funding and how they want to drive that where they think the need is greatest. The fact that globally we made this decision to change to a partnership model. We grew over the past 6 months from about 40 partners globally in about 13 countries to 130 currently in other countries. But in Madagascar, where we are purely and 100% service delivery, they are the first. So getting that confidence and assurance from the team that actually if they can deliver this change and shift with Fiave's organization, they can do it for another 10 or 20 or 30. And if you can do it for those, they can shift our entire model in Madagascar. So they are a real test case. It's not about the number, but it's about the effort, the commitment, and the buy-in to that effort. Tulia, where he's based, is one of the places where we have worked for almost every day for the 20 years of our existence. We are deeply rooted in that community. And for that team to have the trust and confidence in the model to say, you know what, we're going to pass this capability. We're going to hand the leadership and the power to these community groups, and we're going to invest in their capability, gives us the assurance that we're on the right path.
I appreciate that. Powerful to do it where, not just where you can't reach, but where you're already rooted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because it's often harder where you're already rooted deeply.
Right. Easier to trust your own gut.
Yeah.
Ceri-Leigh and Elizabeth, curious. Either of you have something you want to share about how did you know you were on the right path?
I can go first. So for us, naturally, it was going to be easy to work with other health organizations, right? But when we started getting inquiries from organizations that are not in the health space, we knew that we were on the right path because other sectors were beginning to see the value in what we are doing. And also, for lack of a better word, when we broke even, right, when we were now able to make the income that could also support the infrastructure that we were investing in, we knew that for sure we're in the right path. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for us, we're still in the early stages of this pivot, right? And so we're learning a lot as we're going. But I think some of the early indicators have been in our marketplace. The buyers, the payers in this future model, telling us that this is the product they've been looking for is a signal that we're moving in the right direction. And then as we think about scale, for us, growing previously meant a large grant that allows us to move into a new market, build a team, and grow. And that's an expensive way to scale the footprint of your organization. As we think about this now, and I think it indicators when I talk to partners, other entrepreneur support organizations who say, this would be a value add to the SMEs in my network, that is a way we can scale sustainably, right? We want to scale by partnering with other organizations and doing what we do well and focusing on that one thing and bringing that value add to organizations around the world. We don't have to do everything, but we can do this one thing well. So
I love that. Scaling what you know without scaling your actual organization.
Yeah.
It's the thing we all want to learn how to do, so people will come and find you after. Cheri-Leigh, I'm curious, when we think about organizations, well, I guess I'll just say, well, you all benefited from this pivot fund in the last year. There will likely be many more pivots to come, given the current state of the world, gestures vaguely. And so I'm curious for organizations who might feel like they're on the precipice of the kind of transformation you're taking organizations through, what is one piece of advice you'd give them? Like, what's something they should be thinking about? One concrete step they could take? Like, if an organization's hearing you talk about mergers and acquisitions and partnerships and back office consolidation, what's one thing you'd tell them?
I'm going to do a couple of quick things.
That's okay. I accept that.
The one thing is start thinking and talking and sensitizing as soon as possible. Don't wait till you have your back against the wall, because then it becomes a fire sale versus acting from a place of power and agency. And to me, that is the most important thing, because it means you can stay in alignment with your mission. The second thing is figure out how you make sure that your board is a true partner in a generative way on this journey. So many CEOs are really struggling to shift from a board that was vested in one model and very traditionally playing an oversight role to a generative and transformation partner. And that's often like a very difficult hump to make. And I think just quickly, the third thing is sort out and verbalize what your red lines are very quickly. So for example, if you know, I want to be the CEO of whatever this organization continues to be, but we need to merge with someone else, put that on the table. People think that you have the difficult conversations after you've built trust, but difficult conversations actually build trust. And talking about the red lines up front is a kindness, because we'd rather see something fall apart because there was an alignment than 6 months and a lot of wasted resources, and financially you're in a worse off place.
That's good advice. Civic, how about you? What if an organization is sort of hearing whispers in your story of a situation they might be in or something they're considering, moving into fiscal sponsorship perhaps, what should they be thinking about? What's one piece of advice you can leave them with?
I will say, and this is cliche, right? Start with what you have. Do not invest heavily, especially financially, into something that you have not yet tested. So start with the resources that you have, particularly the human resources. For us, we already had, our finance team, our operations team, governance, and all of that. And that's the same team that we leveraged instead of going out and doing big recruitment before we know, what the future looks like. And I don't know if anyone was in the Trevor Noah event last night, and he was talking about, setting a very small goal. And then when you hit that goal, you go for the next one. So I think it speaks to that as well. Starting slowly, but being deliberate in how you're starting. Yeah.
And not waiting until you have new resources to do the new thing.
Exactly.
I love that. Elizabeth, how about you? Oh, sorry. If an organization is considering a similar pivot to yours, like what should they know right now, based on what you know right now?
Yeah, I think it's focus on what your core is. What do you do well? What is your value add and differentiator, and then build on that. I think that for us, honing in on where does our impact come from, and where do we add value differently, has been key to. That's our North Star as we move through this pivot. So think about what is your value add. And that's the part that you don't let go of. And I think we've repeated all of that, right? That's making sure you don't
sort of
engage in mission. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ebrima, how about you? An organization is maybe contemplating a big leap from being a doer to an enabler and letting go of all their control. This is a big transformation. And maybe getting smaller in the process in some ways so that they can expand their mission. Yeah. What do you want them to know?
I've mentioned change management earlier, and I cannot underestimate how important that has been for us. Because when we implement our project, we recruit project managers, people who are great people at project management and implementation. When you do a big pivot like this, you have to recognize that this is a specialist area as well, and something that you shouldn't take lightly. And bring in change management expertise, either build it in-house or pull it in. I came into Blue Ventures as the first post-founder CEO 18 months ago, taking over from Al, who is we call internally a wise, great Al. And he did amazing work for 20 years. And so you can imagine changing from a founder who's also managed the organization for 20 years to a new CEO, but you're also pivoting at the same time, changing your model from direct delivery to partnership. You cannot underestimate how much of a change that is to an organization, and how important it is that the basics that you take for granted are done right. You're doing proper stakeholder mapping, and you're developing proper stakeholder engagement plans from your board to your staff, to the communities, to those partners that are you're shifting to, because you're moving from a delivery and control person to a customer service agent. So talking with partners like himself to say, what do you need from Blue Ventures? For us to deliver those outcomes for the marine ecosystems and the communities is depending on you. What do you need from us for you to be successful? And what that takes internally to build a culture that also supports that. And now we're driving this mantra internally to say, everybody who is global, your one-line job description is to make sure that the regional teams are successful. Everybody who is in the region, your one job is to make sure partners are successful. And the partner's job is to deliver those outcomes and impact in our communities. That's a big shift in mindset. It's a huge culture change. And unless you properly manage it, chances of you shooting yourself in the foot are very high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing something else that we were saying too, which is, as you're describing all this change, I was thinking about our tolerance as people for ambiguity and our tolerance for prolonged uncertainty. And you described a process that has questions followed by questions followed by more specific questions, and we're building trust along the way. And certainly my reflection on the last year is so many leaders that I know and love and respect. All of us have had to increase our tolerance for prolonged ambiguity. But in doing that, like, the fruits of that labor are so apparent now. But I imagine they weren't on the first day you set out to make this shift.
No, not at all. It takes time and to build that trust, the confidence. Last week, we were in Nairobi with our technical leads, dealing into the details of this transition and bringing them along and asking them to find the solutions and giving the space to them to say, it's okay that you don't know all the answers. And when we ask people, what are you scared of? Half of the fears are about ambiguity, not knowing what this will look like. What's going to happen to the quality of our programming? What's going to look like because we don't have control over the budget anymore? These communities know us, they sort of depend on us. That's going to change. How is that going to look like? So there's a lot of ambiguity, but talking to staff, leaders today, it's okay that we don't have all of these answers. And most of them, we probably will never know. Let's iterate, let's be willing to learn and fail fast. The cliches you hear, but in a big change pivot like this, it's real. That you do not have the answers. You don't even know what's going to happen next week. That Nairobi meeting was supposed to happen in Doha. 2 weeks ago, we had to change it to Nairobi.
Right.
So there's so much you have no control over. So giving staff the confidence to deal with ambiguity and to be okay with, you know what, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're okay to go into it and we'll deal with it as the way it comes.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's the perfect note to open it up to questions, which I'm shocked we have time for. It's an unprecedented time management exercise for me. So we probably have time for a handful of questions, maybe 3 or so. Let's get hands up, and reminder to please wait till the mic gets to you, even if, like me, you have a very loud voice, because we want to make sure the translators catch it too. Who has a question? I see 1, 2, okay. 1, 2, 3. So let's start.
Can I start on this?
Sure.
Hi, thank you so much. It was great listening to that. Just one quick.
Will you tell us just your name and your organization?
Yeah. My name is Huda. I work with Selco Foundation.
Great.
And one is, how do you design, plan, or manage exits? Just wanted to know a little more about that. And the second is just for Ebrima, a very small, quick question. Like, so when you do pivot, I think sometimes within the organization, you kind of really have to account for, mental models and identities. And those are really difficult to, say that, okay, you need to meet certain outcomes, outputs, pivots within a certain time period. And like you said, it takes time and you may not really have that time. So how do you manage, internal structuring, staffing? Just a little more insight into that. That's it. Thank you.
Sure. And I'm going to ask us, let's take our other 2 questions so we can see if there's thematic alignment. Might be able to get through more. So Cheri-Leigh, I think that first one's for you.
Beryl Levenger, Route to Change. This question is probably mostly for Civic. You mentioned your fiscal sponsorship model included M&E. And I wondered, since that typically is not part of a fiscal sponsorship model, what other services as well were you considering offering or actually offering, and how did you determine what the package would look like, please?
Thank you. Will you pass that mic to 2 people behind you? And then we'll test if I can remember all these.
Hi, thank you for such a thought-provoking discussion. I'm Anna. I work for Witness. We work at the intersection of AI and human rights. I guess my question is for all of you. You've all touched on uncertainty, ambiguity, identity. How did you navigate building trust with your stakeholders throughout all of this? I think there were some like nuggets of what you said, but I'm really interested, especially in how you brought boards, how you brought your funders, how you brought like different people into your space when you don't have all the answers, and there might be people who are skeptical, and like how do you do it, like practically speaking? I'm super interested. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to try and go a little bit in order of tactical to philosophical. So Civic, you want to say a little bit about what services you considered and what services you offer alongside physical sponsorship?
Yes, for sure. Something that was very important for us was flexibility, which is not something that you see with most fiscal sponsorship programs. And we have a suite of packages, not just one package, right? So we have the basic, which is your legal, your governance, making sure that funds flow through. But as we speak to our partners, we get to understand what their pain points are and what else they actually need. And M&E has come out as one of those things that is a real need for a few partners, so we are able to support on that. But another example is with one of our partners, they actually did not have even your basic operations. I'm thinking like, just booking flights, like your very basic operations. And so we seconded one of our operations staff to be able to assist them with that. And we charge like a very minimal fee because we are still interested in their success and them being able to deliver on their work. So we are very flexible and we tailor make a package based on the needs of that particular organization. And this is also based on our own learnings because many years ago, we used to be fiscally sponsored and we know what our frustrations were and we know how difficult it was. So we are doing it by learning, by saying this is what we do not want to become. We do not want to become a hindrance to the programs that we are working with. Yeah.
That picks up on another theme that is coming up, which is in order to offer all those services flexibly, you have to really know what you can and can't do as an organization.
Yes.
All right, Cheri-Leigh, tell us a little bit about how do you set up exits? Is that your question?
Yeah, I think similar to how Civic was just talking about tailor-made packages, I think it's really hard to say this is a roadmap for an exit. I think organizations, even ones we've worked with, come at different phases of readiness. There's a history that's on varying level of deep engagement. And if we're talking about leadership exits, for example, it looks different to a CEO that arrived 18 months ago to a founder that started something from scratch, right? So whether it's your organization exiting from a piece of work or a community or the leadership, I think it is so bespoke. And I think that is why people need support because it is a journey. I wish there was a downloadable toolkit for this is how you exit from anything. I just think if we want to do it responsibly, we have to really unpack an organization situation. But happy to talk more about this as well.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to talk about how do you build trust? Your board, your other stakeholders, you're asking to make a big leap and trust you to work in a completely different way with a technology you may not have worked with before as an organization. How'd you build trust?
I think it's an ongoing process. I think it's hard and messy. And I think it just starts with being really honest about what you know and what you don't know yet, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, recognizing that there are always trade-offs and that you're learning. I think authenticity is a core component of trust. And so that has required a lot of personal self-reflection. Sure. That has required a lot of team self-reflection as an organization. And, it's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing relationship through this process. It's not a one-time thing. But just being really honest about what it is that you're doing and what you're not doing is the key part of that.
Yeah, the temptation to act like you figured it all out to build the trust is real.
Yeah.
Ebrima, I'm going to end with you. Your question was about sort of like how do you build relationships and help people navigate the change of identity within the work? Mental models.
As part of our change management, we had to spend a lot of time on this. We've just commissioned a culture review of the entire organization to help inform that as well. We're building a new impact model, which is nearly ready because our understanding of how we achieve impact before is completely different to how we're going to do it going forward. And we had to do an entire organizational redesign as well, and bringing expertise into that and getting staff to engage with that, from a new executive leadership team all the way to what the regions and countries are going to look like, based on what partners are telling us, the capability they need to be successful, ensuring that we're investing in that capability, whether that's in monitoring and evaluation or technical competencies that they need, blended learning models. So it's the whole piece, and because we are change managing it, it's allowing us to be aware of that entire value chain or entire circle suite of things that need to do, and having different people manage all of those simultaneously, and because no one piece is more important than the other, and if you get one wrong, it undermines your entire chain.
Thank you for that. So we're going to turn the last part of this session around to learn a bit from the wisdom in the room, because as we learned from our hand raising exercise, you are also all experts in the art of the pivot, whether you wanted to be or not. And so we are going to ask the tech team to put up a slide. And you're going to form groups of 3-ish people at your table. We have about between 10 and 15 minutes to do this. We want everyone to have time to chat, so 2 to 4, choose your adventure. I want you to each reflect out loud to your group, based on what you heard today, or maybe what you brought into the room as well. What's one thing you are curious to try or explore in your own work? And what is one thing you might have to let go of to do it? That's right, we're doing personal self-reflection on the first day of the Skoll World Forum. So you can find a couple people, don't overthink the group formations, and just have an open chat. And then when I come up here and yell you down, we're gonna stop and we'll do a little bit of sharing back. Sound good? All right, thank you. We have a couple minutes left, so before we go, I want to bring a couple voices in the room, so would love to hear. You can share something that you shared or something unattributed that stood out to you that someone else shared, but like, what stood out to you from that? Who wants to share something? What's something that stood out that you're going to take with you? Yeah. Oh, we need the mic, right? Thank you, mic runners.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natasha Kaoma from Zambia. And what stood out to me on this table, so I shared how I feel overwhelmed with my job, and I feel like I need to hire someone else to do what I do so that I can do a lot of more strategic work and thinking. And someone else on the table had a similar problem, and we are at different scales of operation, but we have the same problem, and that was really good. But also on the other side, the other 2 ladies shared how they want to scale down, because Sabrina said, don't scale what works, ask yourself what works at scale. And so both of the 2 ladies were talking about how one of them, they're working in many countries, and the other one is working in many different areas, and they're asking themselves what should they let go of. And it's a hard question, because sometimes it means some staff might need to leave, and there's so many direct consequences. So it was just really interesting to see that we face similar problems even if we're doing different work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Who else wants to share? Over here, we got a contributor, a brave soul in the corner.
I'm sharing this on behalf of the table. So something that resonated with most of us at personal
What's your name?
Sorry. Vimi Malhotra. I'm from Children's Investment Fund Foundation, in short, CIF.
Great.
So something that resonated at both personal and professional level around our table was really this whole, debate that is going on. There's no resolution yet, which is about contribution versus attribution. As we do more upstream work, as we do more work which is really collective, along with others in the ecosystem, how we as organizations and as individuals probably need to reflect more on our personal and organizational egos to say that it's okay if our name is not against an impact that happened or a change or an outcome that happened, and that will be important if we have to make things shift and change collectively. So that whole attribution versus contribution, no resolution yet, but at least the debate is on.
A shared problem to work on, and a team maybe emerging at the table. Awesome, thank you. One last, I can take one more. They sounded pretty interesting. It was hard to get you back, so I know there's things that are going to stick with people. Yeah, let's head back here. Wait for the mic, please, so the translators can hear. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jana Ngube. I'm with an organization called Crisis Section. I'll share what I felt resonated with the three of us. The personal fear of letting go, if I can put it in that way, because in many ways we all have to be letting go of something. And so it was confronting to have to recognize and deal with the fact that some things are the way they are because we ourselves as the leaders are not letting go of certain things, but we must.
Ooh, that felt resonant. I heard some mms in the room, which makes me think some of us are struggling with that too. I certainly am. Well, just want to first of all thank you all for spending your time with us today. This was a super rich conversation. And want to thank our panelists as well. Can we give them a little round of applause? It is a brave thing to get up on any stage like this and talk about your work. It is a braver thing to do so with humility and vulnerability, and that's what all of our panelists did today, so just want to acknowledge that. And maybe leave you with one thought, which is my moderator's prerogative. In preparing for this panel, I had a chat with someone at the Skoll Foundation, and we were talking about how many conversations I have convened or been convened to in the last year where we ask the question, what does the future hold? Does it sound anyone else? Trying to predict the future, figure out the new world order, new paradigm, or new operating principles that are going to govern our lives in a sector that has been rocked, or sectors, I should say, that have been rocked by massive change. And maybe in the theme of embracing a little uncertainty, what we came to in that conversation is that the future is not something that's going to happen to us. The next era is not going to be defined and then shared and then a place that we operate. It's something that we're building right now, every single day, in the micro choices and the macro choices that we make. The next era of social impact is what we decide it is. It's the values we hold on to even when it's hard. It's the work that we do that not everyone is on board with right away, but we know is the right path forward. And it's the willingness to admit when we've made a mistake and have to change course. And that will weave, those threads will weave together the sector that we all operate in, because we will build it. And so with that, I just want to say to our panelists, what I heard today is that we are building a future era that is full of permission to let go and trust somebody else to do the work you once thought was yours, to know what you do well and offer it no matter what, to know what is yours to build or to buy or partner with, and to generously offer support in a moment of transition. And after a tough year, that sounds pretty good to me. So thank you, everybody.